sus pasos, que todo el mundo los sabrá. Desde el verano voy hasta Sacramento, hasta Sacramento. Mis derechos a pelear.
Sí se puede.
It's just incredible that you all turned out. I should say, as I've done more and more of these events, one of the things I think I feel most grateful about is that I didn't participate in any of this work that I am writing about. I spent time in archives. I obviously have a great amount of admiration for what the UFW and what Fred Ross accomplished, but it was in a much more abstract way. And so when I get to be in rooms like this and feel the energy and feel the sort of meaning that people got out of those periods, for me, it's a real, I just feel very lucky to have been invited into rooms like this to talk a little bit about Fred Ross. I should say one thing real quick as a, just to because one of the, this is a good one, willpower. If you've been in a meeting with Ross and he's identifying each person about what you've accomplished that day, willpower, there is no substitute for willpower in an organizer. Fast talkers, look out for fast talkers. Stay away from fast talkers. Unless they also were part of that rare breed that talk fast and show up and knock on doors and heels. And he had the strategy, which was he would show up at the tent and say, wow, that coffee smells really good. And they would inevitably invite him inside, and they would drink coffee together. And he would do some talking, but he'd mostly do listening. And he describes this period as the great training ground for organizers. He also described it as a very painful organizing experience because at each of those tents he's drinking cups of coffee. And then he goes tent to tent to tent. After 10 tents, he's got 2 or 3 gallons worth of coffees in the system. And yet he's got 30 more that he has to get through before they go out to start working in the fields. But I think he realized that he had 2 attributes of organizers that are critical. You have to be curious, and you have to listen, and those are related. Thank you.
Thanks for being here and to learn more about my father. You heard Gabriel say that my dad grew up in Echo Park. And I may not look like a vato from East LA, but we lived in Boyle Heights. And so I was learning Spanish at the same time I was learning English. And 50 years ago, at the age of 18, because I was bilingual, my dad invited me to come down to Arvin Lamont for the historic DeGiorgio election. This was the biggest, baddest grower in the valley. And the Teamsters had been invited in to crush the farm workers movement. And if they'd been successful, that would have been the end. And Gilbert was working on that campaign and many others. Before I go there, I would like to ask, I know a number of you are here. One of the things that I saw my father do, and it applies to modern day bullies, and I'm not going to name any names, but he knew that if you ridiculed and poked fun at a bully, they wouldn't know how to respond. So he came up with the idea of a daily flyer that they called El Mosquito Zumbador, the stinging mosquito, and it was a chisme rag. And there was a feared foreman by the name of Jesse Martinez, who had, and he began as an ape, and they drew him as an ape, and he ended up with his Marine-style crew cut. And what that did is to give all the farm workers a license to start laughing at Jesse, and he did not know what to do with that. And that was the beginning of the end of their fear. And as I thought about my father and the slogan of Si se puede, even though he wasn't using it at the time, his message, whether in Casablanca or in Sal Si Puedes, was really a Si se puede message, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because when he talked about that bloody Christmas case, there's an important detail there that goes to his listening. I found his notes that night, a few years back. And he writes, about 10 minutes into the meeting, he writes, no one's looking up from the floor. My stories, he writes, are not landing. This is about to be a huge failure, he writes. And then he says, then I remembered when I did speak to Caesar the night before, he told me that a number of his friends had had run-ins with the cops. And some of them were graduates of San Quentin, not Stanford or San Jose State. And that's when my father said, that's when I knew I had to tell the story of Bloody Christmas like I'd never told it in my life. Animo was something my father really believed in at the right time and the right way. So he poured it on because he felt that injustice. He saw those poor kids coming out of those jail cells. It was personal to him. So when he told it, they knew he was the real deal. So that sincerity got through.
In the spirit of Fred Ross, Social Arsonist Award presented to Gilbert Padilla for his decades of setting people on fire and low-income and farm workers communities through California and across the nation. July 28, 2016, Fresno, California. From some of those whom, in the spirit of Fred Ross, he may become aware of their own capabilities. And that's what Gilbert saw in me. And so now I'm going to pay my dues back to the union by make sure that Emilio gets elected as nuestro next congressman against Baladao.
Hector Tarango moved from Boyle Heights to Santana, and in this, what he described as a school for Mexicans and a school for Anglos, and Tarango was the one that said, why is it? It's 1946 now. The war's over, we got GIs coming back, and here we got discrimination. So he went to his friends, Burgos and some of the other guys that he hang around to find out what was happening and why now they got the soldiers coming back. So they started a voter registration and they couldn't get deputy registrars and they flunked. They didn't get nowhere. Started again, and then Fred came in. Fred was working with the Committee on Race Relations, and Fred came in to talk to him about that, and they were telling Fred, well, we can't get deputy registrars because the Kirk doesn't give us any registrars, we can't register people. So Fred took them as a group to the courthouse and forced them to give him deputy registrars. And then they got deputy registrars, then they went to register 1,800 people, and then they won and put one person in the school board, thinking now we got some there. But 4-1, they couldn't get. Suis generis, is a person one of a kind. That's right.
So generous.
I'm going to say something about a medical.
And you get somebody else involved and somebody else involved, and soon enough you have this big fire, a big group of people ready to make a difference. And in the song I said, we all are a part of this world. We all share the same suffering. So let's wipe our tears, get up, and stand together. So this is dedicated to this next generation, to all of us, to get ready to go to work. Now what are you gonna do to make it happen? To change the way we're living, to change the way we're living here. Oh, let me tell you, it only takes one voice to make the fire blow high. It only takes your voice to make it right. It only takes our voices to make the fire blow high. So get up out of your seat.